Good afternoon. I guess good evening, everyone. This is Professor Hill. It's a short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics Philosophy 2306 here at St. Philip's College for the spring of 2025. And today's Friday, January the 31st, the last day of January, the end of our second week of class. And we actually have an assignment due Sunday night. So this weekend coming up. So like I said, I wanted to make a short video because it's Friday, and to answer a couple of questions I've been getting from students and been trying to respond one by one, but they were good enough to where I want to make sure to let everybody know the answer to these couple of questions. So got to close that. All right. So number one, there were some students who were asking about the length of the assignment, the essay. Number one, it turns out I don't have a minimum word count, but it takes most students a page and a half to get in and answer the questions, because you gotta lay out, because it just comes down to, do you agree with her decision, yes or no? But then why? The why is the hard part. That's the question that takes a little longer to answer. Why do you believe something's right or wrong? So, and again, you got to remember, we're talking about the decision. It says her decision. As I was trying to clarify earlier in the week, it's really her mom's decision, not Jenny Lake's decision, because she's a minor. She's 17 years old. So again, she and Jenny Lake, 17-year-old minor, and the mom are in agreement. But do you support the decision? And if so, why? That can be a little tricky, in part because of this piece. Let me just phrase it like this. It sounds like they're in agreement. They both agreed that she would stop her treatment, try to give the pregnancy enough time to progress and for the child to be born, which is what happened. But of course, she ended up paying the price she knew she would pay. The mother knew that Jenny would pay. The doctors knew that Jenny would pay, which is that she died just a few days after the birth of her son, Chad Michael. That's not a small factor in all of this, especially this, because some students, when they say, well, look, I agree with the decision. Jenny made the decision that she wanted to stop her treatment to give her unborn child the best chance to survive. That kind of sacrifice is heroic. It's her sacrificing literally her own life to save her child. This is what parents do. Parents make sacrifices for children, up to and including their own lives, to save their children. We kind of call this the mama bear, principle, which is that it's just kind of a natural thing for parents to do, for mothers to do. Jenny did it in this case, and it's admirable, and I support her decision because of the mama bear principle. Well, the only problem with that is, because that sounds good, but if you take the principle and you apply it to Jenny, that works. But you got to remember, this was really her mom's decision. And if that's your principle for thinking why it's a good idea, and you apply it to the mom, now mom needs to apply that principle to her daughter, to her child, to Jenny. And say, look, Jenny, even though I know you might disagree with this, and Jenny, even though I know you're going to fight me on this, you're my daughter. It's my job to protect you. I'm the mama bear. You're my little cub. And I need to fight and do everything possible to save your life, which means you need to keep taking your necessary life-saving treatment. So you get, even using the same principle, the mama bear principle, you get two different outcomes if you apply it to Jenny or you apply it to her mom. So you got to think about that. If you're going to use that rationale, who are you applying it to? Because the decision maker was the mom. And again, you just can't answer this question without also talking about the doctors. and why the doctors went along with this, why they agreed to this. Somebody had asked me, they said, you mentioned last time a second case, and we will get to another case later that's related to this later in the semester. But the reason I mentioned it offhandedly is just that there are other cases where the doctors refuse. And they say to the parents, look, if you are going to make decisions which are endanger the life of your minor child, it's our obligation to fight you on that. Because look, in our society, we have in place rules, systems to protect children from abusive parents, from parents that make decisions which harm and endanger their children. We intervene to save innocent children. And so the question here is, why didn't the doctors do that? By the way, it's a short story, but I'll tell you the short version, which is that years ago, I was in law school, joined a clinic where you practice in the courts. You actually get sworn in to practice law under the supervision of an attorney, one of the clinical professors at the law school. So they're the attorney of record, but you actually get out and do the work. And so we had a swearing in ceremony, and my supervising attorney comes into me and says, hey, congratulations. I'm looking forward to working with you. Be in the courtroom tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're jumping right in. And so I said, what's going on? She said, I'll explain it to you in the morning. Well, I show up the next morning and I come into the court and I kind of sit in the back. And the lawyer, my professor, is sitting up at the front. And she looks at me like, hey, you dummy, get up here. Come sit up here at the table. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I sit next to her and I still have no idea what's going on. So I say to her, what is this case about? What are we going to be doing today? And she says, you see that guy over there? I said, yeah. She goes, we are going to exercise the second most powerful thing that a court can do. In our whole legal justice system, the most important thing is the state can take someone's life. In a death penalty case, somebody can actually be found guilty and sentenced to death, and then the state, the whole judicial system, takes that person's life away from them. I said, okay. And she goes, right below that at number 2 is what we're going to do to that guy today, which is we're going to take his children away from him. And I'm like, oh, wow. She goes, yeah, I want you to think about that. We're going to be part of the state taking someone's children away from them. And I said, I assume he's a really bad guy. And she's like, oh, yeah, believe me, we're intervening to save these children from his established abuse. And I'm like, okay, well, man, let me tell you, I got an education that morning. It was crazy. And but boy, she did it. And she was an expert. And it was a powerful lesson for me. And I think she was right about the power of that. I'm a parent. I have a daughter. And I can't even comprehend that. The power of someone to come in and take my child away from me. But you know what? There's an argument to be made in this case that the doctors should have done that. Like I said, they do it in other cases. Because, hey, guess what? Jenny Lake ended up dead, and the doctors knew it when they took her off her chemotherapy and agreed to it. So, some students say to me in this case, well, if she'd continued the chemotherapy, isn't that amounting to abortion? I say, oh, that's an interesting, because believe me, the chemotherapy was clear. If she had continued treatment, they would have to have terminated that pregnancy. Now, again, that's interesting because the use of that word and what it means oftentimes implies a choice. Did she have a choice in this case? Yeah, she exercised it. She stopped her treatment. But it's also, there's a connotation to what would happen is continuing to your treatment, your chemotherapy, your life-saving treatment that terminates a pregnancy. That's not normally what we associate with the term abortion. Is it? Yeah, absolutely. But we're talking about the nuances of ethical considerations and the parameters and the subtleties about that. Is there a moral distinction there? No. The circumstances are compelling. Are they exculpatory? Did that mean somebody's off the hook morally? That's interesting. Got to think about that. There's a lot there. But the same thing is true on the other end of this, which is that what about Jenny's decision? Is it suicide? Are there moral ramifications to that? Is it, again, exculpatory if she is sacrificing herself to save her unborn child? Does that somehow make it not something we would associate with kind of a moral problem, but somehow being a moral example that we would want to emulate or at least celebrate? Yeah, you can see this is a complex case, folks. There's a lot of subtleties involved with both ends of this decision, whether she stops the treatment and tries to allow, which is what happened, the child to be born, or whether she continues the treatment. And again, the consequences and ramifications of that decision. This is a tough case. It was always going to end badly. There was no happy ending here. You know, some people like to talk, well, maybe if she'd pull the chemo down enough to fight the cancer but not harm the baby. And I'm like, well, and that's what they're trying to do medically. But in this case, it was clear that the situation Jenny Lake faced, it was a clear either or. She had to make a decision, and she did. Well, at least her mom did, with Jenny's input and advice and consent. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So anyway, think about all that as you are writing your essays. And again, students had asked me about the length. I had said this earlier, but just to be clear, in terms of the logistics of this, most students write about a page and a half to answer all of the questions and sort out the why. Because the question is, was it right or wrong? Do you agree? And then why? Don't skimp on that point. That I would like to hear why you think this is right or wrong. So, all right. I'll keep answering questions throughout the weekend. As you have already seen, I don't make a video every day. I make videos on occasion. I'll probably make one again this weekend at some point before Sunday night, which is when the essays due. But I will for sure answer questions as we go along. And again, if you get in a jam, you've got my cell phone number. You can always reach me with a text or a call in case something comes up. But anyway, always try to reach me first through the Canvas messaging, last through email. You don't want your message to get lost in the piles of email. So always try the Canvas messaging, which is only you. It's only the students. It's only about our class. So it's easy for me to focus on that. But again, if you, like I say, if you get in a jam, give me a call, send me a text. You can do that too. All right. Sorry, we started off with such a difficult case. We did. Like I said, it's a tragic story. It ends badly, but it does raise lots of important ethical issues for us. That's why we're talking about it. It was a sad, terrible choice that she had to make. But again, this is exactly what we're talking about. These are true, actual cases involving real people making very real, difficult choices and decisions. All right, take care. And hey, we got a whole semester of this. We're here all the way to May, so a lot more of this to come too. All right, take care. Let me know how I can help, and I'll talk to y'all again soon. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.